Hello everybody, welcome to week 5 of our course Introduction to the Achaemenids. Today I'm especially happy because in our session we will be discussing one of my favorite topics, art. You see, Achaemenid art was not innocent whatsoever, nor was solely created to embellish the imperial capitals, but to send a message. Art is among the main containers of ideology for cultures, what we know as self-defining narrative. Art history findings allow us to learn how the Achaemenids saw themselves, the territories they ruled upon, their neighbors, and much more. And to illustrate all of this, I chose to speak about the only, the unmatchable, the jewel of the crown, the incredible city of Persepolis. Although, you may find a little surprise in the end. Are you ready? Let's begin! Persepolis was the ceremonial and administrative capital of the Achaemenid Empire for a long time. The city was founded around 515 before Common Era. This is the date the earliest remains provide. And this was the work of ours truly, Dara, who now we can consider one of our best friends and somebody that we will be summoning quite a lot in this session. Persepolis is located in the province of Fars on the plains of Mordasht, and it is strategically encircled by the Zagros Mountains. It was declared World Heritage in 1979 and never stopped receiving visitors. Persepolis is not a usual city, as we could perceive others around the globe, but a Palatine complex that kept growing and expanding throughout the centuries. Thus, some of the structures could be considered a bit strange if we look at the plans of the buildings because they kept on being added organically. This is something we've mentioned in other sessions of the course. The place is elevated by a platform that creates uniformity, and here we can find palaces, monumental entrances, audience halls, treasuries, and many spaces that, up to today, we don't know exactly what they were destined to. I feel like I've said this before, but Persepolis is another exonym. It's a Greek name that means the city of the Persians. The original name of the city was Parsa, like the province, like the tribe, but extracted from Iranian literature and folklore. There is another name, Tahte Jamshid, the throne of Jamshid, one of the kings from the mythical era in the Book of Kings. That book truly deserves a course on its own. As we were saying, Persepolis was founded after the death of Cyrus and with Dariush I well established in power. And although the place acted as a ceremonial capital and had its importance, its geographical location made it, let's say, not so practical for daily life. Other capitals, often larger in size and in greatness, were Susa, Babylon, or Ecbatana. Nevertheless, none of them have preserved an iconographical program as interesting as the one in Persepolis, since the city reflected exactly the pretensions Dariush had for his recently created empire. Yes, I cannot go through a single session without naming him because this man was too much. A key to understanding the reign of Dara and his legacy was how intelligently he used the imperial rhetoric to create a propaganda with one purpose, create an identity, an imperial identity under the rule of the new Achaemenid dynasty. Dara had under his power an empire vast and varied, and the cultural and ethnical richness could be as beneficial as it could turn detrimental for him. He had to unite conceptually territories with different languages, religions, traditions, and customs, and he ought to be extremely cautious while conforming his official discourse, since his intention was to emphasize variety as something to be proud of, but highlighting the idea of unity. a mandatory first stop for understanding Dara's imperial rhetoric is precisely art, especially that of key cities such as Persepolis. Its reliefs do not show armed conflicts, such as those the King of Kings took pride of at the base of the inscription. Neither there is a visual deployment of his military prowess to the common visitors. Quite the opposite. The north and east staircases to the Apadana, the main audience hall, represented the embassy that came to visit the imperial capital in a pacific way. The emphasis lays on dialogue and cooperation. These delegations are walked through the reliefs by Persian courtiers that are taking the visitors to the presence of the King of Kings, and they are received as equals, as friends. The ambassadors on their end present their tribute and gifts as luxury objects or exotic animals. The general message Dara was sending from his capital was precisely that such a large empire as his owed his stability to the collaboration of all its members, regardless of their provenance. Different delegations display their traditional garments and are easily identified and differentiated, but at the same time, they are not signaled by those differences. The art in Persepolis is conciliatory, like the message that I intentionally wanted to display before his subjects. Nevertheless, despite the message being including, these reliefs have also the hidden message and quite an intelligent manner of organizing the different embassies under a marked hierarchy. The space is divided in 3 levels. Those delegations on the upper level, such as the Medes, the Elamites, or the Parthians, are the people closer to the heart of the empire geographically. On the other hand, those placed in the lower levels, like the Ethiopians or the Somali, are the furthest. This representation of the satrapies is a visual translation on how the empire was conceived, not only geographically, but ideologically. Those closer to the center, to Persepolis, that was considered, as we mentioned, the heart of the empire, and thus the area with the greatest importance, occupy a higher position regarding the others. The closer they were meant a higher status for the satrapy, and also those in which Dara had his eyes placed most of the time. Do you know the saying of keeping your friends close, but your enemies even closer? Yep, that. This division was not created in a pejorative way, but the representation was carefully calculated. All the embassies have the same size. The heads are all at the same level with the Persian courtiers, and despite the separation, visually, the conciliatory spirit is maintained. The peak of this imperial ideology of unity among the satrapies is portrayed at the tomb of Dara himself at the archaeological site Nakhshe Rostam, the Achaemenid royal necropolis. The lower levels show the different satrapies and tribes of the empire, again differentiated by their physical attributes and their garments, and they are holding with their arms the throne of the King of Kings. This position, with the arms not only up but intertwined, this was the final message that aimed to live in the world, both to his contemporaries and his descendants. It was precisely his leadership what conceived the largest empire to the date. Blessed by Ahura Mazda, Dara presented himself as the herald of unity that achieved cooperation between people so varied and different, and made them feel part of something greater. And in this variety, this diversity, laid the power of somebody who literally managed to rewrite history. Persepolis was a place of great importance, certainly, but sometimes we forget about a city that was key for the political and administrative control during Dara's rule, and that was Susa, Sush in Persian. Susa is located to the south of the Zagros Mountains, close to the current border between Iran and Iraq. The city was already an important capital under the Elamites and a key enclave for the ancient Near East. It was incorporated to the Achaemenid domains in a more or less specific manner as part of Cyrus II's campaign to conquer Babylon. The twist was that the Elamite population of Susa was not that thrilled with the loss of their independence, and there happened two revolts that attempted to oppose Dara around 522-521 before Common Era. Dara, who, as we know already, did not get oath for note, decided that a way of avoiding future problems was to settle the imperial presence in the capital and elevate Susa to the same level as other royal capitals like Ecbatana, Pasargada, or Babylon. Thus, he embarked in the construction of a palatine complex of large proportions, massive. The access to the enclosure was through a gate presided by a statue of Dara. This is the only exempt statue we have from an Achaemenid king. This means it was thought to be seen from every angle that could be walked around. Do you remember this piece? We talked about it in the last session. On the pedestal, they appear all the imperial satrapies in hieroglyphs. This was a propagandistic pamphlet that indicated that the King of Kings had been accepted as a ruler of Egypt and, at the same time, the gods had blessed him. Again, Dara did not get oath for note. The famous Achaemenid immortals, Iran's best-known warriors, also come from this palace in Susa, which allows me to explain that nothing that we saw today was colorless. Polychromy is a common phenomenon in the ancient world, and Iran was no different. The monumental gates and reliefs were covered in colored glazed ceramic, like the immortals or the friezes of the passant mythical creatures. The reliefs of Persepolis were also colored with vivid pigments, and you can see a reconstruction in one of the links of the extra content. I encourage you to take a look at them. And that would be all for our session of the week. I love Achaemenid art, and hopefully this session served as the first step for you to dive right into it. Remember that should you have any questions, you can join the discussion topic in the designated week on Google Classroom and leave them there. Have yourselves a beautiful day, Bachar. Khodafez!